In 1961, the French Egyptologist and mystic René Schwaller de Lubitsch first proposed that water shaped the erosion in the Sphinx enclosure. In the 1990s, John Anthony West and Robert Schoch took this further. They said that the Sphinx is older than ancient Egypt, and that it had been carved by a yet unknown civilization. Some archaeologists, especially early ones, also disagreed on who carved the Sphinx. Today, most geologists don't want to redate the Sphinx, but many disagree on the exact cause of the erosion. Can we shed new light on this controversy? Let's find out. In this video, we'll analyze the arguments about the age of the Sphinx. We'll compare them with physical evidence and the historical context and conditions. In Part 1, we'll cover general topics like erosion, proportions, etc. In Part 2, we'll deal with claims by 6 key geologists, one by one. At the end, we'll present an attempt to objectively estimate the age of the Sphinx. As usual, we colorize and enhance old photos. If you want to see more videos, please like and subscribe. First, let's get something out of the way. For some reason, some people still call for the enclosure floor to be drilled, to look for cavities under the paws of the Sphinx, as prophesied by Edgar Cayce. They seem completely unaware that this has been done years ago, in many spots around the Sphinx. The aim was to assess the danger to the Sphinx posed by the groundwater, especially if polluted by sewage. Here's footage of a camera dropping down all the way to the water table, through a drill hole behind the Sphinx. It passed through limestone and nothing else. Here's the footage of drilling under the front paws of the Sphinx. And here are the resulting limestone cores. As you can see, near the water table the limestone is caked with yellowish clay. This is a terrible spot to store any kind of archives, as they would deteriorate quickly. In Egypt, if you want to save something for posterity, a much better location are secluded caves in desert mountains. These are the kind of spots where we actually find well-preserved artifacts, like the Royal Mummy Cache in Deir el-Bahari. Incidentally, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in a similar setting. The earliest mention of the Great Sphinx comes from the Great Stela of Amenhotep II. This stela was found in 1938 by Selim Hassan in Amenhotep's temple near the Sphinx. By the way, not many people know that the temple was originally a mud brick building. What we see today are just the limestone elements and lots of reconstruction. The stela describes how Amenhotep admired the beauty of the sanctuary of Khufu and Khafra, that is, the 2 pyramids. It also mentions the altar of Horemakhet, or the Sphinx. The famous dream stela by Thutmose IV, found between the Sphinx's paws, referenced Khafra by name. Khafra's partial cartouche still existed when Lepsius found the stela in 1843. Today the line with the cartouche is gone. Finally, there's the infamous inventory stela. It was found by Auguste Mariette in 1858 in the Temple of Isis, in Giza. This temple abuts the southernmost of the Queen's pyramids. This southernmost pyramid is attributed to Henutzen, either a wife or a daughter of Khufu. The inventory stela claims that Khufu built his pyramid near the Temple of Isis, and that he restored the Sphinx. If true, this would mean that the Sphinx predates Khufu. The problem is that the Temple of Isis was built on top of the mortuary Temple of Henutzen, dating from 4th dynasty, like the other temples of the Queen's pyramids. If the Isis temple was built on top of 4th dynasty structures, it can't really be older than them. It was also built on top of the double mastaba of Khufu's son, Khufu Khaf, and his wife, Nefertkau II. And it wasn't just built on top. A ceremonial road to the temple bulldozed its way right through this mastaba. If an ancient temple existed here at the time of Khufu, the owners of the mastabas occupying the exact same spot would have mentioned it in their titles. Their titles mention many religious honors, but no ancient temple at the same spot. In the Old Kingdom burials in Giza, the only goddesses mentioned are Hathor, Bastet, and Neith. If an older temple of Isis really had existed there, and Khufu had restored it, it's very odd that Isis isn't mentioned anywhere in 4th Dynasty's inscriptions in Giza. For reasons like this, archaeologists conclude that this story was invented by Isis priests, who wanted to claim ancient origins for their new temple. As far as Sphinx's age, let's first list the basic facts that most people agree on. The Giza Plateau slopes down to the southeast by a few degrees. The Sphinx was created by excavating a horseshoe-shaped enclosure around the desired shape of the body. This area may have started out as a larger quarry. The Sphinx consists of 3 main strata of limestone, called members 1 through 3, aligned with the plateau's slope. The top and bottom strata are harder than the middle one. The topmost stratum, member 3, forms the head. This stratum is quite resistant, which is why it's much less eroded. Most people, but not all, agree that the head started out as a knoll protruding from the bedrock. The Sphinx's body and the southern and western walls of the enclosure were cut into the weaker member 2, which is why they're the most eroded. The harder lowest stratum constitutes the floor and the terrain to the north. Most people agree that the blocks quarried in the enclosure were used to build the bulk of the 2 temples in front of the Sphinx. Most people would agree that the Sphinx and the 2 temples were made roughly at the same time. Big vertical fissures run across the Sphinx and the enclosure walls. These fissures are tectonic in origin. They existed long before the Sphinx was carved. If water contributed to erosion, which remains to be seen, the slope would direct water runoff from the plateau into the Sphinx enclosure. Erosion on the Sphinx is not a single isolated mechanism. The debate is really about which factors are predominant in which areas and what led to such conditions. Some people try to fix the age or the duration of exposure based on their proposed erosion rates. But erosion patterns can be misleading because they depend on many factors, which we can't control for. This is called differential weathering. In this church, within the same wall, some blocks look fine, some are heavily eroded. In this extreme example, the upper half of this sculpture looks fine, the bottom half is unrecognizable. On the Great Pyramid, right next to each other, some blocks look pristine. Some show damage. Others are almost completely destroyed. To judge the erosion rates, you need well-matched controls, especially in cases like Giza, where different areas were exposed or covered at different times. Without controls, erosion rates often amount to pure guesswork. An important feature on the plateau is the Khafra Causeway, which runs east-west. It bisects the quarry areas to the north and south. In the context of Sphinx's age, some arguments try to establish a timeline of quarrying for areas north and south of the causeway. But what needs to be made clear is that only one quarry area can be linked to a specific pyramid, namely this section in the northeast. That's because Khufu's ceiling was found by Saleh in 1974 in the rubble between the walls of this ramp. Other than this location, all proposals to link specific quarry areas to specific pyramids are just speculation. Usually, this speculation is linked to some ideas about ramp location, work organization, etc. The bottom line is that we have no way to establish how the causeway fits into the quarrying timeline, nor what it means for the Sphinx's age. In the debate about age, Sphinx's proportions are often brought up, specifically the size of the head. Most people frame the proportion issue as, the head is too small compared to the body. This serves as an argument that the current pharaonic head was recarved from an earlier, bigger head, usually claimed to be lions. Let's first frame this issue correctly by comparing the Great Sphinx to other ancient Egyptian sphinxes. The phrase, "the head is too small," doesn't accurately capture what's really going on with the Great Sphinx. In a front view, the head proportion isn't actually much different from other ancient Egyptian sphinxes. It's only in a side view that the head looks distinctly too small. Let's overlay 3 other ancient Egyptian sphinxes, keeping the middle of the back at equal height. We can now see that there is something else going on here. It's both the trunk and the front paws that have been stretched out of proportion. The correct framing of the proportion issue is thus as follows. The body, including the front paws, but not the head, has been elongated towards both the front and the back, but not side to side. The most commonly cited explanation for making the body longer towards the back specifically is that of Mark Lehner. He posits that the rump of the Sphinx was shifted further back to get past the big pre-existing tectonic fissure near the back of the Sphinx. We see three problems with this theory. 1. It doesn't explain the elongated front paws. 2. If the goal was to avoid hollow spaces related to the fissure, shifting the rump back didn't really accomplish much. Due to the fissure, almost the entire left thigh was still missing. These voids, still, had to be filled out with extra material if the builders wanted an unbroken surface. 3. The fissure is here. It narrows down towards the ground, forming a V shape. We can use this photo from Bereza's excavation to verify this. Looking at this diagram, the obvious question is, why not just end the Sphinx before the fissure? There's still a tiny intersection with the fissure, but the required fix seems rather minimal. Ending the Sphinx before the fissure would both avoid the hollow spaces, and the Sphinx would have good proportions. To us, there's a better explanation for the Sphinx's odd proportions. It's simply gigantomania. The builders elongated the Sphinx in both directions on purpose, just for the sake of making it longer. The pharaoh could now brag about a lion 150 cubits long, as opposed to 100, without the cost of having the other two dimensions match the length proportionally. Let's clarify a few issues. It's only in modern times that we can see the Sphinx from drones or helicopters, which makes the disproportion easy to see. In ancient Egypt, you'd either see the Sphinx from the front, from the enclosure, or you'd just be told what its length was. You wouldn't see the Sphinx clearly from the side, like today, because the corridor on Khafre's causeway was enclosed. This short section at Unis's pyramid shows how such an enclosed causeway corridor looked, with just narrow openings for light. As far as the north side, in this clip, Colin Reeder comments on the proportions of the Sphinx.
And yet the head of the Sphinx, when you look at it from this direction particularly, it's too small. The body is long, it's tall, and the head is quite out of proportion.
Colin Reeder is likely standing roughly where this modern road is. But since at least the New Kingdom, if not earlier, there were several walls, as high as the western edge, fencing off the ditch from the north. A tiny stump of one of these walls still exists to this day. Thus, since at least the New Kingdom, if not earlier, if anyone stood in the same spot, one of these walls would obscure the Sphinx's body. In the New Kingdom, an observation platform was built in front of the Sphinx, on top of the Old Kingdom temples. This should not be confused with the Greco-Roman platform built on top of the Egyptian one. But from these platforms, you see the front view, which is similar to other Sphinxes, proportion-wise. Let's illustrate how modern perception of such monuments differs from the ancient one. If asked to draw a symbol for a pyramid, most people today would draw a simple triangle. But the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph for a pyramid is a triangle with a distinct horizontal base at the bottom. That's because in ancient Egypt, all pyramids were surrounded by walls. Unlike today, when all these walls are gone, Egyptians perceived a pyramid as a triangle behind a horizontal rectangle. Similarly, there's a difference in how ancient Egyptians got to see the Sphinx compared to us. The elongation of Sphinx's body is akin to what we today call forced perspective, a structural trick designed to make something look more imposing. Such tricks are still used today. The battlements on the Disneyland's castle are made progressively smaller the higher they are to make the towers look taller. It's not the perspective doing this, it's the architect forcing a perceived larger size on you. Monumental stairways are sometimes wider at the bottom to make the structure look bigger by forcing a stronger vanishing point at the base. Similarly, lengthening the trunk was just a cheap way to increase the perceived size of the Sphinx at no extra cost. No extra cost because the pharaoh simply had the ditch around the Sphinx dug longer rather than wide, but the volume of excavated stone remained constant. Architects still make structures bigger than they need to be, just for the sake of bigger size. In 1930, Chrysler and 40 Wall Street in New York competed to be the tallest building in the world. 40 Wall Street finished first as the tallest building, Then, out of nowhere, Chrysler revealed a previously hidden spire, which was designed just to beat the competition. Today, there's even a term for size added for its own sake: vanity height. In skyscrapers, it's the height above the last fully occupied floor. There are statistical charts tracking vanity size across space and time. In case you're wondering, the Venus Tall building is this hotel in Moscow. A whopping 42% of its height was never designed to be occupied. The Sphinx is basically the earliest example of this, though in its case it's vanity length, not height. To sum it up, the Great Sphinx differs from other sphinxes because, in ancient Egypt, you could not easily see its cheated proportions the way you could with smaller sphinxes.